I came home from a war zone expecting peace, and instead I found tomatoes growing where my freedom used to be. Yeah, that happened. 9 months overseas, sand still in my boots, jet lag chewing at my brain, and the first thing I saw pulling into my driveway was a pastel sign that said East Ridge Community Garden, growing together. Growing together on my land. I just sat there in the truck for a second, engine ticking, hand still on the wheel. I had left a fenced backyard with a cedar deck I built myself, grill tucked in the corner, flag mounted on the post. I came back to plastic fencing, mulch piles, and little white stakes marking neat rows of soil like my property had volunteered for public service while I was gone. My fence line had been pushed forward almost 40 feet. 40. You don't misplace 40 feet of land by accident. That's when I heard her voice. "Oh, Henry, you're back." Amanda Langford, HOA president. Mid-50s, bleach blonde bob sharp enough to cut glass. Pink cardigan like she was about to host a bake sale instead of a land grab. She walked down the sidewalk with that confident little sway like she'd just upgraded the neighborhood, and I should be thanking her. "You want to tell me," I said, stepping out of the truck, "why my backyard looks like a farmer's market exploded?" She tilted her head, smiled like I was the unreasonable one. "Technically, Henry, that parcel was considered a gray zone. The board determined it was unclaimed. You weren't using it. Unclaimed. I had a deed in my glove box older than her HOA presidency. That's not how property law works." "Well," she shrugged, "maybe you shouldn't leave for so long next time." And there it was, that little grenade of a sentence. As if deployment was a vacation. As if serving overseas meant forfeiting my yard to whoever planted the first tomato. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just nodded, got back in my truck, and drove straight to the county records office still in uniform. Took about 20 minutes to confirm what I already knew. My boundary line hadn't moved an inch. But then the clerk leaned closer and said, "There's a boundary correction filed while you were overseas signed by you." Signed by me. Except it wasn't. It looked like a drunk toddler had tried to forge my name with their non-dominant hand. And attached to it, a notarized affidavit transferring 20% of my lot to the HOA for community enhancement. Sold for $1. $1. They sold my land for less than a cup of gas station coffee while I was serving my country. That's when I stopped being tired and started calculating. Back home, I installed cameras front and back. Dug out every purchase document, every survey map. Called my buddy Curtis, lawyer, former Marine, the kind of guy who irons his jeans out of habit. I laid everything out on his kitchen table. Fraud, forgery, illegal reassignment. And that was before we even got to the fake notary. Amanda's niece from Tampa, no license in our state. Curtis looked at me over his glasses and said, "You want your land back, or you want her buried?" I said both. Here's the thing about people like Amanda. They get comfortable when they think they've won. So I didn't send angry emails. I didn't make threats. I waited. I watched. I documented. Every board meeting where they allocated more funds to garden expansion phase 2. Every smug stroll past my driveway. Meanwhile, Curtis filed suit. Quietly. Preliminary hearing landed fast. Judge turned out to be a retired Marine. Stiff posture. Eyes like he still expected mortifier. Amanda showed up without a lawyer, color-coded folders stacked like props. She waved a hand when Curtis laid out the forged documents. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "We're improving property values." The judge leaned forward. "Your job is not to commit real estate fraud, Miss Langford." That was the first crack in her confidence. Curtis dropped a motion to freeze HOA assets and compel financial records. Approved on the spot. Temporary injunction issued, meaning any garden work after May 1st was a violation. Guess what I found the next evening? Fresh mulch dumped and a laminated sign dated May 3rd. Contempt motion filed. County inspector showed up before noon the next day, staring at that mulch like it personally offended him. And then the twist hit. Mary Ellen, the soft-spoken HOA treasurer nobody paid attention to, came forward. She had emails, internal notes. Amanda instructing board members to fast-track land grabs while owners were away. Military, elderly, vacation homes, anyone unlikely to notice fast. It wasn't just me. She'd been skimming HOA funds through shell companies tied to relatives in other states. Community projects billed, money siphoned, improvements barely started. The state attorney opened an investigation. The judge placed the HOA into receivership overnight. Amanda's authority evaporated. Community meeting was packed, neighbors shoulder to shoulder. Administrator took the mic and announced the land transfer fraudulent, project suspended, audit pending. Amanda stood up red-faced. "You can't undo years of progress." Old Frank from the back called out, "Progress doesn't usually involve felonies, Amanda." Room went quiet. Then laughter rippled like a wave, finally breaking. But it didn't stop there. Federal agents showed up at her house 2 mornings later. Unmarked SUV. Windbreakers. Within 5 minutes, she was in the back seat, clutching her handbag like it might float. Curtis called me an hour later. They found offshore accounts. Wire transfers from HOA escrow, over $300,000. $300,000 siphoned from neighbors' dues and fake renovation funds. They traced shell companies across state lines. Fake tax IDs. Identity data sold to marketing firms. Even garage key codes from a security upgrade she pushed. It wasn't just land theft anymore. It was racketeering. Then I found something that sealed it. Behind the disturbed patch of earth near my old fence line, buried shallow, was a wooden box. Inside, Amanda's private notebook. Handwritten ledger. Names. Adjusted boundary notes. Payments. Targets. Beside my name, military, gone at least a year. Prime target. Prime target. You know, I've been called a lot of things in my life. Never that. We handed it over. Subpoenas flew. Vice President flipped for immunity. Emails exposed. Data sales. Threats against Mary Ellen's husband's contractor license to keep her quiet. Federal indictment came down heavy. 23 counts at first, then more added. Wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy. They denied her bail, found a second passport and tickets to the Cayman Islands dated 3 days after the garden broke ground. She hadn't just stolen land, she had an exit plan. The HOA was dissolved entirely. Town council stepped in. We rewrote the charter from scratch. No fines without court approval, no land reassignment ever without unanimous consent. Open financial reports, term limits. I didn't want to sit on that task force. I was tired. But then I thought about the elderly neighbor who'd been fined into silence. The young couple terrified to question anything. So I said yes. Amanda's trial was clinical. Cold courtroom. She wore gray. No jewelry. Hands trembling. Didn't look at me once. When it was my turn to speak, I stepped forward. "I came home expecting my house intact," I said. "Instead, I found a garden where my backyard used to be. But this isn't about land. It's about trust." She turned neighbors into suspects and community into control. I've seen what unchecked power does overseas. I didn't expect to see a miniature version of it on my own street. Judge didn't hesitate. 24 years federal. No parole. She flinched. Said nothing. Outside, reporters swarmed. I didn't give interviews. Didn't need to. My fence line said enough. Restitution checks went out. Illegally fined homeowners refunded. Amanda's house auctioned. New couple moved in, painted the door navy blue, added a porch swing. Life went on. I rebuilt the deck, replanted my cedar boxes, left one small metal plaque in the soil where the garden sign once stood. This land was stolen. It was taken back. Here's the part nobody tells you. The biggest damage wasn't the 40 feet of dirt. It was the silence. The way people stopped making eye contact. The way fear settles in quietly when someone abuses authority and calls it improvement. The lesson hit me slow. Power doesn't need a uniform to be dangerous. Sometimes it wears a cardigan and carries a clipboard. And if nobody pushes back, it grows like weeds in unattended soil. We didn't win with threats. We won with patience, paperwork, and truth. It's slower, less dramatic, but it lasts. Now I stand on my restored deck most evenings, grill smoking, kids laughing down the block, and I feel something I didn't even realize I'd lost: ease. The neighborhood breathes differently. So here's my question for you. When someone in power tells you they're doing it for the community, At what point do you step in? Where's the line between order and control? Between improvement and theft? Would you have fought or let it slide to keep the peace? Drop your thoughts. Tell me if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a board, a boss who crossed that line. Because silence is how it spreads, and stories are how we stop it. And trust me, nobody's planting tomatoes in my yard ever again.